As a person, she was just wonderful. She was beautiful. She was kind. She was caring. She was considerate. She was as daft as a brush, typically blonde, and very good fun to be around. I miss her. I miss her only when I'm breathing. So it all started about Christmas in 2018, on Christmas Day, when my son started with flu. And a couple of days later, I started with it. I had my mother staying at the time as well. She also got it. By the time we got to Hogmanay, New Year's Eve, Bethany had started with it. She was 18. It was her first Hogmanay of being 18, and she didn't want to miss it. So she dosed herself up on paracetamol and off she went. She came home the next day, New Year's Day, early hours. She wasn't very well. She put it down to having too much wine and having flu. She had some friends staying as well, and when they went home, I thought I'd better get her to the doctors because the chest pains that she had weren't looking too good. We had all been in and out of the doctors with this flu, with coughing fits, and I'd previously broken my ribs through too much coughing or taken out the ligament between them or some such. My son was the same. He had rib pain, and when I got her out to the doctors, it was actually the day after New Year's Day. She described the symptoms, and the doctor saw it as the same as we all had, which is understandable. The whole peninsula had just about had this flu. In the doctor's words, it was paying her rent that month, the Aussie flu. But for some reason, I don't know, it just seemed a little bit different to what I'd had. So we went back and were told it was the same thing. And then on the third day of going back to the doctors, which was now the 5th of January, I took her in and she was really unwell. She'd been unwell all night. She'd not been able to make it up the stairs to go to bed. She wanted to sleep on the sofa downstairs where I stayed with her. She seemed to have a relatively peaceful night. I was on the other sofa in the sitting room with her. She kept coughing. She kept saying she was warm and throwing her, she had a fleece blanket on. I kept covering her back up again and feeling a temperature. She didn't particularly feel warm. We did the paracetamol, the usual things that you do for it. The following morning, when I woke up, I could see that she was really unwell. She was particularly white. She was blotchy. I rang the GP and said that I needed to see her now. And I put her in the car and took her straight down the surgery. It's literally down the road from us. And that was where it all just started to go wrong. She took one look at her and said, right, hospital, I'm calling an ambulance now. She was sat on the couch. The GP and the nurse were trying to get her blood pressure. They couldn't get a reading. Yeah, it was just a really, really horrible, scary moment. So an ambulance had been called. We're in a very remote location up here. We have the highest mountain pass in Britain to get over before it gets to the peninsula. It was not particularly good weather conditions. And the nearest ambulance was out. We have 3 available to us. One's about 18 miles away. One is a lot further and one is even further still. And that was the one that was available to us. We're on the Applecross Peninsula. The one that was available was Gairloch, which is a long, long drive. And she'd called it into the hospital to make them aware of what was going on. And she got a phone call back to say that they had a Helenid ambulance on standby, just waiting to hear where the land ambulance was. And then the next news, the helimed was dispatched to us. It's rocky and hilly terrain here, and when it gets here, there is nowhere for it to land particularly. We don't have big wide roads. It landed in the pub car park, which was fantastic because it was only up the road. Had that been a different time of year, that car park would have been full and it wouldn't have been able to land there. So we were very, very lucky to have that facility. And the paramedics came in, and I felt almost like everything would be all right, like it was under control at that point. I drove home as fast as I could and grabbed a bag, drove to the pub car park, met the ambulance there, asked if I could go with her, and the pilot had said yes I could, which was fantastic. And we were airlifted. We were at Regmore Hospital in Inverness within 34 minutes, met by another ambulance, taken into the hospital. I was asked if I would book her in whilst they took her through, and then they came back for me. And I was told at that point that she had pneumonia and that one lung was completely filled. I think the other one was partially filled, and they were going to take her up to ICU and drain the lung. And I knew it was bad. I knew pneumonia is a dangerous thing, but I felt relief because when we'd gone in, they told me as we were leaving that it was a blood pressure. They couldn't get proper readings. So I'd, in my head, got it really, really bad. And then when somebody turned around and told me it was pneumonia, there was a moment of almost relief. They know what it is. They know how to fix it. She's in intensive care. She's in the best place. And as we were taking her up, I was following them going up, and the alarms were going off, and they bypassed every other bed waiting for the lifts, and straight up to intensive care. I was put in a family room while she was rushed off. And then the next news, they came to get me and to tell me that she had too many white blood cells, and it was all a blur. It's all, you're not really taking it in at the time. You're hearing it. You're just in panic. What they were telling me was a blur. All I was hearing is that I'm going to lose my daughter. And they had to resuscitate her, and they took me through. I was able to sit at the end of the bed. He actually put my hands on her left foot, and I held her left leg and stroked it. And they were doing all sorts. She was wired up to absolutely everything. There was blood tests flying off here, there, and everywhere. A big team of people there. And then she needed resuscitating again. And they worked on her like that, on and off, for 2 hours. Then they made the decision to stop. And yeah, it's just the worst feeling. It's, I don't know what it is. It's nothing like it is when you see it acted on telly. I can tell you that for nothing. It's just absolutely horrendous. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. And we were told afterwards that when she'd gone out for Hogmanay, she had ingested 3 separate bacteria, airborne bacteria that are normally around on people that your body deals with on a daily basis. But when you ingest them onto an infected lung, it goes bad very quickly. And she'd managed to ingest 3 because it was Hogmanay and busy. And she'd managed to ingest the worst 3, and it was just catastrophic. And that's it. Sepsis took her, and it took her very, very quickly under my eyes. I actually wrote to the Helimed air ambulance and tried to get a message through to the pilot that took us just to thank him, because had he not let me go, I would never have seen her again when she was airlifted. But I was able to be with her in the air ambulance. I was able to be with her every step of the way. And horrific as it was to watch my daughter dying, I can't imagine how horrific it would have been if I wasn't able to do that. I know how hard they worked, and I have that thought on a regular basis. I know how hard these people worked, and that brings me comfort. Had I not been there with them, had she gone in a land ambulance and I'd had to drive behind, I may never have seen her again. The air ambulance, 34 minutes rather than 2 hours. Bear in mind they have to first get the ambulance here as well. It was just, I don't know, I'd like to be sitting here saying I owe her life to these people, obviously, and I don't. But what I do owe to them is knowing that everybody works so hard. Everybody tried their absolute utmost to save her. And the roads here being narrow, single track, full of potholes, highest mountain pass in Britain, to go by air ambulance instead of ambulance saved her so much pain. It really did. It's incredible. I don't know what we'd do without them, to be honest. When we were leaving the surgery with the paramedics to put her in the ambulance, and get her airlifted, the GP on the way out said, just to let you know, we're thinking sepsis. And I think people need to be made aware of what sepsis is, and everybody needs to be taught the symptoms, because had I heard of sepsis and heard the symptoms, I know now that I would have said to my GP, this isn't the flu that I've got, because I knew it was different. That's why I kept taking her. But I believed the medics, as you do. Why wouldn't you? They say trust your gut instinct. I thought I was doing, because I could see reason in everything that the GP told me. But had I heard of sepsis and known the symptoms, I think I would have been questioning it. Any family, whether you have kids or not, whoever your family unit is, learn the signs and symptoms of sepsis, because you don't have time to learn it when somebody is ill. You don't have time to think, could this be flu? Could it be sepsis? Could, just learn it. It comes from nowhere. It moves with lightning speed. And if you know the symptoms, you're in with a chance of persuading the GP, the hospital, whoever, that it actually could be sepsis. We're just over 5 years on, 5.5 years actually, since I lost Bethany, and it still hits like a steam train, completely out of the blue. It can be something you see on telly, something somebody says, a smell, a song, a memory, and absolutely anything. Just as simple as walking through the shops at Christmas and seeing something in a window, and you have that initial reaction of, oh, Bethany, I'd like. It hits like a steam train. And all I can say to anybody that's going through it is, do it your way. Don't try and do it by anybody else's guidelines. Just take the time that you need, because there is only you that knows what you're going through. Just take the time to allow yourself to do things as you need to do them. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to go to bed, go to bed. Don't put a time on it, because it doesn't actually go away at all, but you do learn to live around it, and life does still go on, and you do get pleasure out of things. There are only other bereaved parents that can possibly even begin to understand, because it's off the scale. You cannot even believe how it feels compared to other grief. We're all programmed to lose grandparents, parents, aunties, uncles, siblings, but you're just not programmed to lose your child. It's the wrong order, and your brain just doesn't accept it. We have in our community a retired GP, and somebody had mentioned to him that it is becoming a problem with an air ambulance landing. We used to have an area at the head of the bay of grass where it could land. And gradually tourism's increased, and there's often tents there or fire pits, and it no longer can. And it had been mentioned to this GP that maybe it would be a good idea. It's a shame we didn't have anywhere. And he flagged me down in the street as I was passing one day and said, I'm doing this. I'm going to get an air helipad. And my initial reaction was just to say, yeah, fantastic, that'd be a great thing. I'm on board. But I didn't do any of the work. I did some fundraising, but I didn't do any of the work towards it. That was all done by Chris. And all I did was start the Just Giving page and put collection boxes out and try raffles and whatever was going on in the community. People jumped on board and did more fundraising. It was hard to put the story out there. It was emotional, it was hard, and it wasn't an easy thing to do. But you just, it's necessary to get the story out there and to do these things. And I'm glad I did it. And a lot of days I drive past the helipad every day, sometimes several times a day. There was actually, I think, a helicopter came into it during the night last night. I heard I think it was a Coast Guard helicopter that passed the bedroom twice last night, so possibly was in there. And I hear that and I think two things. Firstly, my heart goes out to whoever is needing them. And secondly, they're lucky they have it, because it is hard to get these helicopters in here, and it does make it so much easier. And yeah, there's a little feeling of thank goodness we did this. It does make me feel good that it's a legacy in Bethany's memory, and that brings me some peace, if you like. Air ambulances are a really, really big thing in my mind, and just think they're incredible people. If we can save one other life, it's been worth the effort. And some good has to come out of this tragedy, because it is a tragedy. It's a horrendous, horrific tragedy that I live through every day, and it just brings me a bit of pleasure knowing that some good comes from it.